Well. Welcome back to the second Star Rail lore video. Before we begin, this video was originally over 2 hours long, since I was also adding everything from the first lore video. So I did a vote on Twitter and the YouTube community post on how I should upload this video, splitting it into 2 videos, one on both platforms. So I'm going to keep the original lore video as the first video of the lore. This video will act as the second and cover all the events that took place in the second closed beta test of Honkai Star Rail, all changes made to Aeons and their respective factions, lore found in the archive, and some lore and loading screen tips. So if you have not watched the first lore video, I highly recommend clicking on the link in the description and or the notification popping up in the top right corner of your screen currently. Now, with all that said, I feel one of the bigger strengths of the first lore video was having very little fluff, so here's a breakdown of all the chapters and their timestamps. I will also have the video itself and chapters on the video timeline to better help navigate to the chapters you're most interested in. Thank you guys so much for all the support on the lore videos. You have no idea how much it means to me, and thank you for giving me a chance. Now, without further ado, let's get into the Honkai Star Rail second closed beta test lore.
Remember what you feel in this moment. As long as you know in your heart where you're heading, you will arrive at the end of the story. That's the you I like.
To expand on the descriptions of Aeons and their respective factions from the first video, while also providing info on the new Aeons and their factions that follow them, I have researched and decided to show the important changes that have been made or tweaked from the previous beta. First up, let's talk about the changes made to Akavili's description. Akavili is the Trailblaze Aeon and believed in 3 directions on the Wheel of Destiny: the unknown, the known, and the cannot be known. He believed that the idea of the unknown is tolerable. However, the cannot be known sounded more like a challenge. Due to his belief, Akavili left his original home planet, called Pagana, in search of finding the end of the Tree of Existence. Akavili's dream was short-lived though, as he was abruptly ended due to an accident we have no information on. Next up, Nanook, the Destruction. While there was no direct change to the Aeon of Destruction, we did however get to see Nanook in person this time. And as you can see, it did fit the description that we managed to get in the loading screen tip that we looked into last time. Now, one of the most massive changes was to the erudition, Naus. While there wasn't much changes to the Aeon itself, we got major changes to the factions that follow them. For example, Circle Sagacious has been renamed to the Genius Society, which Herta is a part of, while the Erudition Association has been renamed to the Intelligentsia Guild. The way they act is the same as before, but during one of Herta's logs in the archive, we learn each school that they mention in the bio of Naus, which is as follows. The first up being the Synesthesia School. The Synesthesia School is undoubtedly the school that has made some of the greatest contributions to the galaxy. The researchers of the Synesthesia School worked to build a common thought bridge between the different species known as the Synesthesia Beacon, which is widely used today. Thanks to this beacon, all body movements, flash signals, sound vibrations, or the change in odor molecules, any sort of signal that holds meaning will be converted into a thought pulse and translated into a comprehensible language. The IPC, which is the International Peace Corporation, used the beacon as the foundation and built a giant database storing the speech and vocabulary of almost 100 million languages. It is said that the IPC is still paying the school a hefty licensing fee each quarter, and has reached the wealth of a nation. A reliable contact has mentioned that the next research topic of the Synesthesia School will be ultra-long-range remote communication. Next up, the Astral Ecology School. This school views the galaxy as a large ecological observation subject. The school earned its recognition for the discovery of the celestial comet wall. The corporation was exhilarated to hear the confirmation that this was an ancient creation of Glapoth, Aeon of Preservation. The third school is named Candelographists. The Candelographists are the printing department of the guild. The school is founded upon the noble gesture of altruism, surrendering the selfish scientific research and throwing themselves at the grand service of sharing wisdom with more people. The most famous book that they have sold is The Traveler's Guide. Next up is the Armed Archaeologists. This is a school passionate about galactic exploration and archaeology. They are always headed to the most desolate planets and exploring some of the most dangerous ruins. Imagine a group of scholars armed to the teeth ransacking every place they can find, triggering traps left and right just to find and dig up valuable artifacts and ancient writings before calmly laying down explosives and opening up a path to the surface with total destruction, before happily boarding their ship and leaving. Some say they look to be more mercenaries than scholars, but that's up to each person to interpret. Finally, we have the Quantum History School. This is a new school reformed from the bankrupt Psychology History School. Their purpose is to look at history and find influences and patterns to make predictions for the future. However, they have become a group of scammers that use those predictions for fortune telling. A huge change to the description of an Aeon is Tazaranth, the Aeon of propagation. Before, it was a short paragraph that did not give much information and said that the swarm had been stopped by fate. However, this time around, while the premise of the Aeon stays the same, it is mentioned that the faction, the swarm, even without their king, continues expanding at an incalculable rate, bringing fear and disaster to the worlds chosen as their nests. This means that while Tazaranth, their king, may have been stopped, the swarm itself has not. One of the most mysterious Aeons is 9, the Nihility. Again, while there is no changes to the Aeon itself, there seems to have been a new faction added that follows the Nihility. They are called Device 9. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there is no way to unlock the information on this faction during the beta. But from using the context clues on the description of Doctors of Chaos, I believe Device 9 is the first of the two options that can occur when a person treads on the path of Nihility. Thus, being the organism will devolve and truly become nothing, which is called self-annihilators. Again, while we have no confirmation, one could assume they try to push others to believe that existence is worthless and to join nothingness. Next up, we have a new Aeon. It's the Challenger Tenuis, known as Mythos, the Enigmata. They believe that it takes a foolish man to think that humankind could eventually exhaust the understanding of the universe. Mythos fights against the belief for answering all questions in the universe, which Nous is trying to accomplish. In the process to prevent the certainty that the erudition brought about from destroying the possibilities championed by Mythos, Mythos conjured the fog of thought and the rain of sensation to reveal to the mortals the inexplicable truth through the 4 agents: Morph, Screen, Riddle, and Mirage. While we do not know what the fog of thought and rain of sensation can entail, I'm certain that we as Trailblazers will encounter these at some point or see the destruction that they could cause. There are 2 new factions that are shown to follow the Enigmata, the first of which are the History Fictionologists, which is a group of emanators that were enlightened by the Aeon. They often plunge into the sea of stars, traveling from planet to planet with the sole purpose of fabricating, obscuring, and destroying the local history. They believe that the past determines the future, and that when a civilization's history is definite, they are only left with a sad and rigid path forward. They are determined to shroud the universe in mystery. History fictionologists have a reputation comparable to that of the Antimatter Legion, so much so that the Intelligentsia Guild have publicly denounced them. The Antimatter Legion destroys matter, but the history fictionologists destroy the universe itself. The second faction is the Riddlers. While they were once known as poets, after contact with the Aeons, they turned into incomprehensible people who spouted ridiculousness and wrote falsehoods. The Riddlers are obsessed with destroying the certainty of language. Words used to express meaning are gradually obfuscated in the mouths of the Riddlers. They deconstruct texts, abuse metaphors, change word orders, tamper with semantics, and transform otherwise precise language into something beyond recognition. Aha, the Elation. Again, no change to the Aeon itself, but there has been a change since the last beta, as they were previously known as Aha, the Joy. Now, the Elation is the same definition as joy, just a higher state, which does fit the description of the Aeon a lot better than just joy. One more mention while we are here, though, is a faction that was listed by the name of Garden of Recollection. This faction is said to follow the path of remembrance, which is not a path that was listed in the Aeon section of the archives. However, in the description it does say that they follow their master Fuli, which in a loading screen tip does actually mention Fuli as the Aeon that presides over the path of remembrance, who records all that has been forgotten and prepares for the rebirth of the universe. As for the group themselves, they have Memo Keepers that believe reality is constantly reincarnating. As stars die and black holes evaporate, the only treasure is in the memory that proves the existence of people. These Memo Keepers are dedicated to preserving and sharing memories. Enlightened by their master Fuli, they shed their mortal flesh and live on in spirit. With this unique gift, they can freely traverse between worlds, unconstrained by their physical limits. They are also often found disguising themselves as native people on the worlds they visit. Another faction that was listed this time around, which again was locked and unable to be unlocked in this beta, is the Cremators, which I can assume also follows the Path of Remembrance, same as the Garden of Recollection. Similar to Nanook, we did also get to see Glapoth. Again, no change to Glapoth, but we did get to actually see them in the beta as well. There is also a small loading screen tip that mentions an Aeon by the name of Long, which describes Long as the deceased ancient Aeon who presided over the Path of Permanence. They left behind a large number of descendants known as Long Scions. However, this is the only information I could find on this Aeon. Alright, so this next section is going to be similar to the very last section that was in the first lore video, where I'm going to be speaking very quickly. I'll be covering every event that happened in the story that was given in Closed Beta Test 2. So without further ado, let's get started, because this one is a long one. The game opens up to Kafka playing her air violin as the Herta space station gets invaded by the Antimatter Legion. After an explosion, Silverwolf comms to Kafka saying that the system time is 23:47, which is 11:47 p.m. Kafka then mentions Elio by name and that he can tell the exact future. She also asks if the explosion was part of his script. Silverwolf confirms and reads from the script saying 23:44 system time. The pulses from the explosion cause a massive breakdown from the master control system. We then learn that the explosion was caused by the Antimatter Legion and not the Stellaron Hunters, which is comprised of Kafka, Silverwolf, and Elio as far as we know. Kafka asks if they need to fight the Legion, to which Silverwolf says Elio did not mention it, so it does not matter. Kafka mentions that their goal this time is to place the target properly. She then goes on to say that nothing matters if it is not in the script and proceeds to engage combat on 2 Antimatter Legion. Silverwolf mentions that a Doom Beast is at the station. An Antimatter Legion bot tries to attack Kafka from behind when Silverwolf tampers with the data of reality and teleports it away to random coordinates. We then learn that the Silverwolf has access to a catalog of items and gadgets hidden inside the station. Kafka asks Silverwolf what the Stellaron is, which is aka the Cancer of all worlds. As they head to the room where the Stellaron could be, they get ambushed by the Legion. Once they end with the Legion, they enter the room where Kafka comments on how no one is there and the evacuation was impressive work. We then learn that Herta has not been in the station for over 6 months and that the evacuation was led by the acting lead researcher Asta. Kafka mentions Elio said that they would not run into the Herta, which continues to show that Elio has been accurate so far in his script. Silverwolf finds that the Stellaron was hidden by item number 211 Blind Spot, which is a simple light deflecting field. It allows an object in its field to pass unnoticed, but if a different item ceases to be obvious, the object gets revealed. As we walk through the field, Kafka mentions how Herta is a member of the Genius Society. As Silverwolf and Kafka are getting the Stellaron ready, Kafka mentions how they need to get a receptacle ready. Kafka grabs the Stellaron and the MC is created in front of them out of thin air. Kafka then asks how much the MC will remember, to which Silverwolf responds, "They'll remember you." Kafka then places the Stellaron inside of the MC's chest. The MC then wakes up in a daze and we have an option to say her name, meaning that we have seen her before. Kafka then says that we do not know who we are, where we are, and if we should trust her, but none of that matters. All we need to know is that she'll be leaving us on the station alone and to not think about our past. We then ask Kafka where she is going, to which she replies, "The next stop, to pave the way for the future that is written." Silverwolf butts in, saying according to the script, the Astral Express crew will show up soon and they need to avoid being seen by them. We then hear March 7th and Don Hung come closer to the MC as they decide one of them needs to give us CPR. Before Don gives us CPR, we wake up and March pushes Don out of the way. We tell March and Don our name and that we currently have amnesia. Don explains the reason the Express showed up to the station was because Asta called in help. March explains the Antimatter Legion a bit while also name-dropping a Lord Ravager, also known as the Emanator of Destruction. March continues to explain Herta appointed Asta as lead researcher and gives us an appearance description of Asta. Don tells us we should go to the Master Control Room, where March follows up saying that is where they park the Express. We learn that the Express visits the station every once in a while. Don then explains that the Astral Express is a unique train that travels the stars with the power of the Trailblaze Aeon. Don then name drops Arlon, who is the head of security department and had recently lost contact with the crew. The MC takes a bat that was on the ground to use as their weapon against the Legion. March takes notice on our way to the control zone that we are not wearing the space station staff uniform and asks if we really work there. As we try the elevator, we find out that it's broken and assume that the Antimatter Legion broke it during the attack. Don Hung shows up out of nowhere and says that he does not know how to fix it either. He then continues to explain that he found Arlon and that he is in the control room injured. The crew decides to head back to Arlon to ask if he knows how to fix the elevator. Don explains to Arlon that they arrived at the station to also deliver a rare relic that Herta trusted them to find. March mentions the Legion disregarded the planet they are near and went straight for the station. Arlon furthers that point by saying that they came at a very suspicious time, almost right after the security system had failed. He also explains that while Asta was leading the evacuation, he was tasked with covering everyone, but failed. The crew asks about the elevator and Arlon explains that he shut them down to keep the Legion away from the Master Control Zone. We turn the elevators back on, but only on the highest floor, so we need to head there to ride it. Don asks Arlon if he knows anything about the Stellaron. Arlon says that he does not have the clearance to know about that. As we make our way to the top floor, we find a light cone, which March says she thought only the International Peace Corporation had rare stuff like that. Don explains that the light cones are Garden of Recollection technology that allow you to carry memories around. He also says that he heard that the corporation paid a lot for their usage rights, but has no clue how Herta got a hold of one. Arlon allows us to take the light cone to enhance us in battle. As we reach the elevator, the crew gets attacked by a Void Ranger Trampler. As we defeat the Trampler, it lets out a scream that summons dozens of more Legion members. Himiko sends in a drone that wipes them all out and clears a path to the elevator. We have a small talk with Himiko as Arlon says that he's leaving to report to Asta. Himiko explains that she's the navigator of the Express. The crew heads to Asta to see what the situation is, and Asta explains that they were ill-prepared for an attack and that they should have built up their defense and combat departments. She also explains that the people in the station feel betrayed for allowing the Legion to invade. Himiko asks Asta if she has tried to contact Herta, to which we learn that Asta had sent multiple letters, all of which were met with silence, and that Herta does not care about the space station as she has only seen it as a warehouse for her followers and rare items. Himiko says that she will let Herta know that they brought the rare items that she seeks, and that may get her attention. As Himiko contacts Herta, the rest of the crew goes back up to check on researchers. Arlen explains that he first thought Asta was just a daughter of a rich family, but soon learned how sweet and kind she was and followed her to the space station. He also explains that some researchers did not make it out of the invasion. We also learn that Arlon is used to pain and likes to wear them as a reminder of being able to protect everyone. After talking to researchers, we go to report back to Asta as the Doom Beast attacks the station, in which Asta alerts us to take the Express and leave. The crew does in fact leave, but then they have a discussion if they should go back and help. Himiko advises they leave and take the MC with them, where Don Hung asks if we are that important. Himiko explains that the MC is the one who can turn the tides. The crew decides to head to a path where they can meet up with Welt. We are advised that we should be able to take the Doomsday Beast as long as the Destruction's Emanator does not appear. As we arrive on the platform, the Doom Beast flies in and dives in at the crew. Once we beat the Doomsday Beast, it lets out a final beam attack that aims towards March, but the MC jumps in front of it and takes the hit, which actually hits right where Kafka inserted the Stellaron. This causes the MC to appear floating in space, where a voice is heard saying, "I must leave now. You must see the end of your story." And there's a big giant figure in the back that we learn is Nanook, the Aeon of Destruction, which stares at the MC and causes a sort of activation in the Stellaron and shows the MC scenes of the story that will happen much later on in the beta. The voice then says, "They have already noticed you," as it cuts back to the MC having a crazy energy reaction that appears to be producing a shield to block the beam's attack. There's then a massive wave of energy that seems to knock out the Doomsday Beast. Welt then floats down and taps the MC's head with his cane, sealing the power of the Stellaron to not cause an overload. The MC passes out and we wake up in a rest area in front of March, where she explains that the Doomsday Beast was as tame as a kitten thanks to us, and we then exchange beacons with March, which is basically phone numbers. March texts us saying to go talk to Himiko. Himiko lets us know that March and Don are on the Express and Herta shows up. We learn that Herta is interested in us because of the Stellaron in our body, and she built the entire space station for the sole reason of containing the unactivated Stellaron and keep the blue from disaster. Himiko mentions the Stellaron is very stable in our body. Herta mentions she would like to study us and see what's going on, while also mentioning that this is a service even the IPC cannot buy. After the discussion, Herta texts us and asks us to go to her office in the station. We see Herta in the office as she explains that she did not run there, she transferred to another puppet she had laying around in the office. She then goes on to explain a project that she'd been working on that should help answer the truth about Aeons. Herta continues to explain that they have created a simulated and streamlined universe that allows us to interact with Aeons to help understand them. We're then given the option to either stay on the space station or go on the Express with Himiko. The only option you can choose is to go to the Express. As we head towards the Express, we see March, Don, and Himiko standing on the path where we are allowed to ask them questions. Starting with March, we ask how she first joined the Express, and she responds with how she would like to know as well, because she was already on the Express when she woke up from being frozen in ice. March tells us to join the Express. After talking to March, we head over and talk to Don. Don explains that the Express is not the same as traveling or adventuring, but it's more about how it symbolizes trailblazing, where he then says that trailblazing implies the unknown, be it unknown risk or unknown rewards. Don then gives a heavy and true line: don't use hesitation as an excuse. If you hesitate for too long, your original way of thinking will eventually cease to exist. We then move on to Himiko, where she thanks us for taking down the Doomsday Beast and says that even though Herta does not say it, she also appreciates the help. When we ask why she invited us to the Express, she explains that it is because we are different, and not just because of the Stellaron. Himiko then also gives us her explanation of trailblazing, saying that walking the same path over and over will never be the same. There will always be something new. That's the meaning of trailblazing. MC asks what the next stop on the Express is, which is where we learn that the Express follows the footsteps of Akavili. After talking to Himiko, we then enter the Express, where we are greeted by Pom Pom, which we learn to be the conductor of the train, where he mentions that everyone on the Express is special and not just us, so we best remember that. Pom Pom also mentions that he is jealous of us since he cannot not leave the train yet. We then greet Welt, where he says he will check us out to see if the Stellaron hunters left anything in us or on us, and also thanks us for saving March, then drops a huge foreshadow saying that we still need to be careful because he does not know if he or Himiko could suppress the Stellaron again if it were to go haywire. After talking to Welt, we get this cutscene of the main character talking about the current events and also talking to March, which is where we learn that March was frozen in ice drifting through space. March mentions 2 people by name while hinting a third of those who unfroze her from the ice. The 2 that she named were Himiko and Welt. She also mentions that she had amnesia and has no memories before she woke up on March 7th, which became her name from then on. Pop-Bomb interrupts and says that the Express will be making a jump soon. Walt says that the jumps will feel novel at first, but we'll get used to it over time, and we'll explain how they work when we have more time. We then walk over to Himiko as she explains that the next stop is Eurilo 6, which according to the archives was a lush and beautiful place. This was based off the last time the Express paid a visit, which was thousands of years ago. We're then ready for the jump and sit on the couch to get ready. The cutscene of the jump as shown in Chapter 1 plays. As we arrive at the planet of Eurilo 6, Himiko is shocked at the state of the planet since it did not match the description of the archives. Pom-Pom interrupts saying that the star rail stability is down to 12%. Himiko expands on that by giving an example of an ordinary train, but the tracks up ahead have already snapped and the way forward leads to an abyss. Welt chimes in with the knowledge that the cause of the anomaly stems from a Stellaron, as always, he says. The MC asks what a Stellaron is, but Himiko gives a vague description of what we already know, but says that this is not their first time being obstructed by one and that they at least know how to neutralize their influences. This is also where we learn that the Stellaron can create fragmentums. Himiko decided to send the MC, March, and Dawn to the planet with the mission of finding the Stellaron and research what has happened on the planet. Welt starts to talk about Nanook the Destruction, Yaoshi the Abundance, and Terminus the Finality, but he says that he fails to understand the Aeon's actions. This is the first and only mention of Terminus the Finality as an Aeon. As the main trio lands on Eurilo 6, Dawn mentions that we are not impacted by the cold due to the power of the Trailblaze path. We continue on our path where we quickly run into the Fragmentum monsters. After defeating some monsters, March notices something move in the snow, so we go to check it out. Dawn stabs the pile of snow as we meet Sampo for the first time. Sampo names drop Captain Capard. He also says that if we are not with the Silverman guards, then we are on the same side. The main crew asks if there is a settlement nearby, where Sampo says, what a weird question, since the only city people can live in is Belobog, humanity's last bastion against the Eternal Freeze. He also mentions that the Silverman guards are Belobog soldiers, enforcers, and police. We ask Sampo to take us to the city of Belobog, and on the way we run into some Silverman guards. As we battle the Silverman guards, a much more intimidating guard shows up and blocks one of March's attacks. He then introduces himself as Capard Landau, captain of the Silverman guards. After a while, Capard accuses us of being Sampo's accomplices. We explain how we met Sampo and how we are not with him. March mentions that we are not from Belobog, and the other Silverman guards accuse us of lying, saying that it's not possible. But Capard butts in, saying not to be careless, and that the crew's clothing does not fit the style of Belobog. March then shows a picture that she took of Eurilo 6 from the Express, and the Silverman guards are baffled. Capard mentions that it was not long ago that strange visitors from beyond the sky would visit them, but that after the Eternal Freeze, they made that passage impossible. The game has the visitors from beyond the sky sublabeled as interstellar travelers. Capard then says that he has no right to judge us and must bring us in front of the Supreme Guardian for her decision. As we arrive at Belobog, March mentions how it is much warmer here. Capard then starts to explain the history of Belobog before the Eternal Freeze, which was described as monsters from beyond the sky that set the world ablaze. The land was turned to scorched earth with raging infernos and billowing towers of smoke that would stretch upon the horizon, but Belobog was protected thanks to Glapoth, the Preservation. We know the monsters to be the Antimatter Legion. Dawn mentions that it sounds like he's talking from a textbook and not known knowledge. This is our first hint that the story may not be what it seems. Capard begins to take us to the Supreme Guardian. As we say, we know that the monsters we fought in the outskirts were from the Fragmentum, which Capard questions how we know that. He says that after our meeting with the Supreme Guardian, he would like to ask us some questions. Once we arrive at the building, Capard describes it as Glapoth Fort, the heart of Belobog and headquarters of the Architects, and residence of the Supreme Guardian, which is Cocolia Rand. Capard takes us inside where we interrupt a conversation between Bronya and Cocolia. Cocolia sends Bronya and Capard away to talk to us. She starts off by saying, "Welcome, visitors from beyond the sky." Cocolia says that she knows before the Eternal Freeze descended or the Legion invaded that the world was once prosperous beyond measure and that the Aeon connected their planet to other worlds, and that this is how they discovered Glapoth, the Amber Lord, who helped build the city walls. She then goes on to say that they have not heard from the stars in over 700 years. The main crew explains that they are here for the Stellaron, and they continue to explain what a Stellaron does to worlds. March follows up, saying Stellarons cause different disasters on different worlds, but that every world with a Stellaron will give birth to Fragmentums. Cocolia questions why we'd want to help to get rid of the Stellaron when it has nothing to do with us, which is when the crew explains that we cannot continue forth on our journey until the Stellaron is sealed. Cocolia asks if we truly have the means to seal a Stellaron, and Dawn replies that we can. So Cocolia believes us and she will assist us in any way possible to help locate the Stellaron, starting with giving us a room at their nicest hotel, and will arrange for a dispatch the following day to bring us to her and discuss the matter in greater detail. She sends us out, saying that she needs to look over any information that she may have about the Stellaron, and as such cannot escort us any further. As the main crew leaves, the MC looks back at Cocolia as if she feels something is off. Once the crew is out of sight, Cocolia walks back a little as multiple voices are heard mumbling, and Cocolia responds, "Of course, I understand. Do not worry, I have a way." Once the crew is outside, we meet up with Capard again, where he explains that our movement in the city is no longer restricted. The crew decides to do some sightseeing and meets Pella, the intelligence officer of the Silverman Guards, who is showing a group of kids around the city. After which we go to the Neverwinter workshop and run into Serval as we discuss the heaters around the city. We go inside Serval's workshop and she mentions the underground. When we ask what she meant, she explains that Belobog is structured like two big connected discs. The overworld is responsible for administration and trade, while the underground is responsible for energy supply and resource extraction. Serval also mentions that the overworld and underground have been closed off for some time. We ask what geomarrow is, and Serval explains that it is an ore that grows in the underground and is extracted and sent up to the surface to power the city, and everything there runs off the energy that geomarrow produces. After talking with Serval, the main crew heads to the hotel that Cocolia gave us, and we see an alley that is closed off due to the fragmentum corrosion. Once inside, we talk among ourselves and mention how it felt like Cocolia was speaking through us and that there was something amiss with her. The crew then decides to go ahead and sleep for the night to gain energy for the following day. Once asleep, the MCs start to hear the voice of the Stellaron say the following. Their hat, you see that? Okay, well, let's go ahead and sleep.
Who are you? What are you?
Oh?
Wait, what?
I don't have a good feeling about this. The voice that they did for the Stellaron is very well done. Okay. After which, the MC leaves their room and is greeted by an already awoken Dawn and March outside, who explain that there's a group of Silverman guards outside, and that if these are supposed to be our escorts, then they are less friendly than expecting. The guards tell us that Bronya is waiting for us down below, and we go to see her immediately. As we walk down the stairs, we see that both Bronya and Pella with some Silverman guards are waiting for us. Bronya introduces herself and says that in the name of the Amber Lord and the Highest, and under the oath of the Supreme Guardian, Cocolia Rand, I hereby arrest the suspected infiltrators under the charge of plotting to incite rebellion. She then says that she is stripping us of our freedom of action and speech and will be tried against the accusations. Dawn mentions that this is an orchestrated betrayal. March mentions that we could run into the alley we saw with the fragmentum corrosion. We then get a cutscene of us escaping into the fragmentum. Bronya gets a crew together to follow us into the fragmentum. After the crew explores the fragmentum, we find an exit and rush towards it, which is where we get another scene of Bronya cutting us off. She then explains that the guards know this area like the back of their hand. The crew then engages in a fight with the Silverman guards, where once defeated, engages with Bronya. During the encounter with Bronya, Sampo comes in and gasses the area and takes the crew away. We then see a scene of young Cocolia speaking to what appears to be a large machine as she says, "They will suffer, sacrifice, and die because of my order." To which the machine that we learn is the Stellaron responds, "It is not death which greets them. They will be swept into the infancy of the new world." Young Cocolia cautiously responds, "What about the Undergrounders? They will lose the protection of the Architects. They will see me as a tyrant." The Stellaron responds once more with, "You have witnessed the world we have promised, a temporary misunderstanding for an eternity of prosperity. We will honor your decision." That is where we learn that the Stellaron told Cocolia to shut off the connection between the overworld and the underground. The MC wakes up to a scene of Sampo talking to a dark gray-haired woman who asks Sampo what he will do with the overworld girl. Sampo responds that he will drop her off with the rest of us when we wake up, as the woman cuts him off saying that he's a bad liar. If it is more attention from Wildfire he seeks, he's going about it the wrong way. This is the first mention of Wildfire. The woman also mentions that the underground has been shut off for over a decade now. After Sampo leaves, we get up and talk to the woman as we learn that she is Natasha, a doctor in the underground. Natasha mentions that the rest of the crew is already awake and left. We also learn that Wildfire is essentially the Silverman guards of the underground, but less stone-hearted. We go to find the rest of the crew and we quickly find Marge as she's talking to Hook, who is the leader of the moles. We play hide and seek with Hook to gain information on where the rest of the crew went. Once we win, Hook says that they were taken to the fight club. Hook shows us the way and mentions that she fights in the fight club on a regular basis. Once we enter inside the fight club, we see Dawn in the fighting arena up against two explosive robots that according to the announcer, are under Svarog. The MC and March jump into the arena to help Dawn defeat the robots. After the fight, the crew spots Sampo trying to leave unnoticed and we follow after. We confront him about throwing us to the Silverman guards as he explains he knew we would be captured, so he ran away so he could break us out. Sampo says that he will introduce us to Wildfire and that if any of them know where the Stellaron is, that they would. On the way to Wildfire, Sampo says that the most undergrounders are miners and mine geomera for a living. We ask what the giant structure is in the distance of the underground, which Sampo describes as the furnace core, and also acts as the pillar that connects the underground and overworld. We end up running into a crowd gathered around Bronya as we decide to help her out, and we get a cutscene of her almost getting shot as Sally is introduced and sliced the bullet. They still almost shoot her. But the dude spoke beforehand.
You dare attack someone on our turf? Well, how about
Yes.
Darn it! Quick, disperse!
Yes.
Fine.
Sele tells Sampo to shut up as he is trying to explain why we're here and says that the wildfire has too much to deal with without Sampo being on their plate. Sele asks Bronya if she's with the Silverman guards that have been down in the underground, and Bronya starts throwing sass, which is immediately thrown back by Sele as they argue about the states of the overworld and the underworld. After some back and forth, Sele says that the Chief Oleg would like to see us and ask a few questions. Marge starts to explain to Sele our want to find the Stellaron as Sampo cuts her off, saying to keep it for the Chief. Sele explains for us to meet at the entrance of the mine. Once there, the MC asks what Wildfire is doing at the mines, and Sele explains that there used to be many mine veins that were being used, but as the fragmenta began to expand and corrode areas of the underground, many of those mines have become unusable, causing there to be a clash of the available mines resources between the miners and the vagrants. Once inside the mine, we find a meetup with Natasha, who mentioned that she does not know where Oleg is, but she is here to heal those wounded in the clashes for the mines. She continued saying that there was a miner that found a Geomera vein with incredible deposits, with that vein being the largest discovery in the last 30 years. The MC explains that the one who found the vein should own it, and Natasha follows up, saying that that is actually the law down here, but the vagrants have a different belief. The belief being, see it, share it, which is how the clash started. We decide to head further in and help the miners we find along the way. Quickly after heading deeper into the mine, we find a miner that was sleeping on the side of the road that gave us a hint that Oleg should be further inside. After dealing with the mine, we run into another by the name of Elaine, who explains that the intersection of the Great Mine has been seized by a band of robots, stopping both the miners and the vagrants alike from going deeper. Sele comes to the conclusion that Boss Svarog is here and behind the incident of the robots. After running into some vagrants, we defeat them and they leave behind a rare piece of equipment made from the International Peace Corporation that realizes we are not from this planet. After making a your mom joke, the robot introduces itself as Richard, the home-use object finder with the nickname of Findy. The crew alongside Bronya and Sele run into a group of miners and vagrants having an argument when it quickly escalates as the vagrants pull guns out to attack the unarmed miners. We step in and defeat the vagrants. The miners thank us and say that Oleg is in fact deeper inside the mine, but that the robots are in the way. Bronya takes this time to explain that Svarog and his robots by stating Svarog first appeared and became a player in the underground when the Silverman guards were called back and the overworld was sealed off. Svarog claims to be the guardian of humanity and controls all of the ownerless robots to protect and seal off the furnace core. The crew tries to head further in to find Oleg, but we're blocked off by a broken minecart and needs to find parts to repair it. Findy pops out and helps us find the missing parts. The crew fixes the cart and continues forward as they run into one of Svarog's personal robots. Shortly after starting a fight, the robot is defeated and the path deeper into the mine is open once more. Once at the bottom of the mine, we run into Clara and Svarog for the first time. Clara speaks to Svarog about the Geomera vein, and Svarog says the vein alone could supply the entirety of Belobog with 231 days of energy. Svarog continues saying that he has seized control of the area to try and stop the miners and vagrants from fighting because of Clara, as she does not want people to get hurt or fight. The crew engages in conversation, and Svarog says that Wildfire trying to get back to the overworld is a threat to his calculations of saving humanity, which is to keep everyone down in the underground. Svarog then activates a robot to fight the main crew as he and Clara flee back into the furnace core. After defeating the robot, Oleg shows up, thanking us for the help with taking the robots down. We tell Oleg about what happened so far in our mission to look for the Stellaron. Oleg says that he has no idea what the Stellaron is, but if anyone would know, it would be. The MC cuts him off and asking if it's Cocolia. Oleg says that the current Supreme Guardian is a liar who uses sweet words to deceive the underground. This comment pisses Bronya off, and she asks Oleg to check himself. Oleg gets back on topic and mentions he was going to say Svarog would know about the Stellaron. He follows up by saying that Svarog is old enough to have seen the war with the Antimatter Legion and when they invaded all those years ago, and that Svarog should have information in his memory bank. Oleg gets the crew a place to stay for the night so they can talk more the following day, but asks to speak with Bronya for a bit to explain to her the state of the underground. As the crew arrives at the hotel, Oleg sets up for them. They have a discussion outside of whether Oleg is trustworthy or not. We decide to keep someone awake on watch to make sure that they don't get attacked again, like the last hotel that we stayed at. Bronya arrives back and decides to take the role of watch duty since she has a lot to think about with what Oleg explained to her. The MC heads up to their room and falls asleep, where we get another Cocolia dream. Sleep. I hope I don't randomly get a Cocolia dream.
I lost her. My wish. Your so-called plan. What is the point of it all? Silence! She is my daughter. My only...
Oh?
A new world.
Fulfill a mother's wish. Not my schizophrenic cacolia. Oh no.
Voice again.
The AMC then wakes up for the dream and decides to take a walk since they can't fall back asleep. When we walk outside, we start talking with Bronya, who is keeping watch, who asks us that if we find the Stellaron, how are we sure that we can seal the Stellaron? We tell her that that is more of a question for Dawn than us. And Bronya begins to describe her past with the Cacolia's decisions and that she approved with the decision to bring all the soldiers from the underground back to the front line to deal with the growing fragmented problem, but that she had no idea that the underground would sink into such ruin without them. We tell her that maybe we could help change the Madame Guardian's mind and that she does not need to bear the responsibility alone. Bronya agrees that with our help it could be possible to change her mind and that we decide to go on a walk to talk more and clear our heads. On our walk, we overhear Sele and rush to find her, and when we do, we see her talking to Natasha, mentioning how she will go to Rivertown to bring something back for Natasha. We speak up and say that we would gladly help with whatever it is to ease Natasha's workload, and Natasha explains that due to the mining accident, the clinic is very low on medical supplies and they need more. She continues by saying that her and Sele are not from this town, but actually from an industrial town to the north called Rivertown, before it was swallowed by the fragmented monsters. Natasha continues to say how she used to manage an orphanage and clinic there. Sele allows us to join her and help find the supplies that Natasha asks for, which includes metal plates, bandages, rubbing alcohol, and painkillers. Once we arrive in Rivertown, we spot the orphanage that Natasha used to run, and Bronya mentions how this place feels familiar somehow. On the way to the supplies, we get some cute interactions between Bronya and Sele. They also comment on how the town seems like there could still be some people living here, even though it should be abandoned. Once we arrive at where the supplies should be, we find all the boxes empty and see footprints near them. We decide to go and try to find the person that could have taken the supplies. We quickly find a child named Eric that admitted to stealing the supplies and hiding them somewhere else. Eric says that he will tell us what the supplies are if we give him money because he needs it to help his dad. Sally starts to yell at Eric, but Bronya butts in, saying that's enough, and decides to give Eric her medal for the Silverman Guards, which is worth a lot. After giving him the medal, Eric tells us that the supplies are at the orphanage, but that the main path is blocked and we need to take a side path. We finally arrive at the orphanage and Sally mentions how she is surprised at how well preserved it is. As we check some of the crates for supplies, a giant fragmented monster attacks us. After defeating the monster, Sally says that there should be more supplies on the other side of the playground, and Bronya speaks up saying that she was correct from before. She has seen the orphanage and this before. Sally follows up saying that that is impossible since the overworld and the underground have been closed off for over 10 years and it would be big news if a Silverman guard had come down here before. As we check the supplies, we find a toy for kids, and Bronya says that it was hers when she was a child, and how she remembers now that she used to live in the orphanage before the architects took her away, before Madame Cacolia adopted her, which means Bronya is an undergrounder. Sally and Bronya go back and forth as they share their surprise by this information, and then Bronya explains that the architects go through a selection process on who will be the successor to the Supreme Guardian, and they go through all the kids at the appropriate age in both the overworld and the underground, but only one is selected. Due to this, the process could take up to a decade to complete. Bronya has a small breakdown on how she feels she is unworthy to be the successor to the throne, and after a bit, Sally interrupts, asking if she's done throwing a pity party, because acting like that is not going to help her in any way. Bronya is surprised but delighted by the way Sally acted and thanks her for breaking her out of the train of thought. The MC decides to leave those two alone for a bit as they divulge memories of the past with the orphanage. As the MC leaves them, they decide to try and find painkillers, as that is the last thing that is missing from the supplies. We walk down some stairs and find Clara and her robot Perkins, but Perkins sees us as a threat and starts to activate defense mode to protect Clara. Clara quickly asks Perkins to deactivate and that we are not an enemy and mean no harm. We explain to Clara that we are looking for painkillers, and Clara says that she's also down here for the painkillers because there are many vagrants back at camp that need them. Clara decides to give us the painkillers. We ask if Svarog is here with her as well, and Clara explains that he did not know that she left to get the medicine, and that Svarog is not a bad guy as he has protected and raised Clara, and sees him as family. She explains that Svarog does not want people to go to the overworld because it is much more dangerous than the underground. He tells her that eventually the underground will be swallowed by the fragmentum. She says that Svarog does not get easily persuaded. Sally and Bronya show up and we explain the situation to them. After some more talking, we share the meds with Clara, and she leaves to try and find more supplies for the vagrants, as we head back to Natasha to give her the supplies. Once we arrive back at Boulder Town, we give Natasha the supplies, and she mentions how there were a lot less painkillers than she was expecting. We tell her the truth and tell her that we gave some to Clara. Natasha mentions that it is okay that we gave her some supplies and mentions that we should head back to the rest of the crew to make sure everything is okay. The MC, Sele, and Bronya then meet up with the rest of the crew and Oleg to discuss what the plan is going forward. Oleg mentions that the rest of the crew went over the Stellaron situation again, and how our best option is to go find Svarog and try to convince him to tell us what he knows, which is in Wildfire's favor as well since they need Svarog to allow them to go back to the overworld. Oleg arranges a guide to help us to Svarog's camp. When we arrive at the meeting place, we find Hook there. We are surprised the leader of the moles will be our guide, but then Sanfo appears and says that he will actually be our guide to the camp by order of Chief Oleg. Sampo brings us to Svarog's lair, and Sally mentions how Svarog may be ruthless, but he would not attack without reason. We walk up to the main gate and find it locked. March tries to use Open Sesame to open it, but unfortunately this does not work. Sampo cuts in, saying that we need to find the correct certification to become a prospector from the robots around the camp to open the gate. We turn around and find the first robot. After answering the questions for the robot, we get the first certification. March puts her hand out and receives the mark, which causes a little bit of pain for her. We then arrive at the second robot, and March gets the mark for the second certification. The crew then finds the last robot, and it malfunctions and sees us as enemies. After defeating the robot, we gain his third certification. We return to the main gate, and Sampo warns us everything past this gate is uncharted territory. As the crew walks inside, they find that Sampo ran off. We get stuck behind another gate, and a robot appears as it tells us the only way to get past this gate is with the permission from Clara. Dawn asks the robot where Clara is, and it replays the last audio log from which Clara spoke, which mentions that she went back to Rivertown to find more robot components. We return to Rivertown and go back to where we found her last time with the painkillers. We find a broken down Perkins, which in its last dying circuits tells us where Clara was last seen. As we run to the location, we find Clara cornered by a giant fragmented monster. After destroying the monster, Sally starts to yell at Clara for coming back to such a dangerous place alone, and asks why she came here in the first place. Clara responds saying that there is a fault in one of the energy hub supply units back at the base, and if she does not repair it soon, then all the vagrants and the camp will be affected. She found all the components she needed, but ran into that monster shortly after. The crew asks Clara if we can talk to Svarog, and Clara sympathizes with our reasoning, but that she cannot take us to Svarog, as he sees Wildfire as a threat and could start attacking, which could result in nearby civilians getting hurt. The crew try time and time again to allow Clara to bring us to see Varog, and ask why he wants to keep people underground, which Clara responds saying that Svarog believes that the overworld is going to end soon and that we must stay underground to avoid that disaster. Clara tells us that she is sorry, but she cannot take us to Svarog and that she needs to go back to fix the energy hub. The crew decides the best course of action is to try and convince Clara that we can change his outcomes by adding the main crew as a factor to his calculations, since they are from a space and could completely change the outcome. So they follow Clara back to the settlement. We find Clara back at camp trying to fix the energy hub, but couldn't figure out why it was not working. Dawn, March, and the MC help Clara fix the energy hub to get it started again. After fixing the hub, we tell Clara that we are not trying to win her over, to which Clara agrees and says that we are good people, but this is just something she cannot help us with. March decided to tell Clara that we are not from here, and now that they are in the underground, then if they are added to his calculations, that we could change them. Dawn asks Clara when the last time he did his calculations were. Clara responds saying that it was when the underworld was sealed off, which was almost a full decade ago. March follows up again saying that the circumstances have changed since then. There is now a Silverman guard down here, and the fact that the main crew is from a different planet, so there's no way that he could have taken them into consideration into his calculations. Clara gets upset and asks that if we could not treat her like a child, saying that the stories of people from other planets are just made up stories that grown-ups like to tell. Bronya tells Clara that she believes us about being from another planet and that she knows it sounds crazy, but that it's true. Clara finally agrees to take us to Svarog, since she knows that she cannot change his mind on her own. Clara brings us back to the second locked gate and tells the robot to open the gate and give us access. Once inside, Clara talks to Svarog and he thanks her for fixing the energy supply hub. Svarog says that since we are not from the Wildfire, he will allow us to talk to him for a moment, where the crew tries to tell him we are here to fix the underground and ask if he knows what a Stellaron is. Svarog responds, "Access denied. You are broaching on a secret that lies at the heart of this world, a secret that should remain unknown to humanity." The MC tells Svarog that we need to reach the Stellaron and seal it, to which Svarog says that historical records state that humanity has already made several attempts to engage with the Stellaron, all of them being motivated by human greed, attempts to secure the article for its selfish end. Svarog then raises our threat level and takes off his peacekeeping protocol, and we engage in combat with Svarog. Midway through the fight, Natasha and Wildfire show up to help with the fight. We defeat Svarog, and as Natasha is about to deal the final blow, Clara runs in front of Svarog and asks us to please not hurt him with tears in her eyes, as he cannot fight any further. Clara then asks Svarog to not push himself any further and to tell everyone what he knows. Svarog decides to add Clara's request and our intentions into the calculation and gives us access to knowledge on the Stellaron. We then get a sequence of scenes from the past.
5. Encryption level highest.
Encryption level
Request
highest.
approved. Transmission.
This is the fruit of many years of research, Madam Guardian.
Oh?
The evidence is irrefutable. This so-called Stellaron is the source of all the destruction.
So they knew.
The people will struggle to accept this conclusion, Doctor. If we were to tell them that the almighty Elisa Rand activated this thing and triggered the eternal freeze.
She activated it?
It's the truth, madam. The truth won't change with the opinions of the people. The reports before you are the precious result of painstaking effort on the part of Belobog's greatest scholars. You must trust the weight of its conclusion.
I have never doubted you, Doctor. On the contrary, I am resolute in the face of this conclusion.
But it's not what you want, is it?
From the moment I took up this mantle, that voice, their voice,
Oh?
has made its home in my mind. I cannot shake them.
So it's been speaking to every single one of the Guardians?
I shouldn't be telling you this. Let's return to your research, Doctor. I'm afraid I cannot make these reports known to the public, unless...
Unless what? Please, proceed, madam.
Unless you have found a way to completely destroy the Stellaron.
Oh. Okay. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and assume she is scared of the Stellaron because it's talking to her, right? But I mean,
I understand. In the name of preservation, I will fulfill this mission.
Cache number 13175. Transmission complete.
There's more.
Next transmission. Cache number 24830.
I don't understand, Doctor. Why do we have to hide such valuable research results away? They're the work of a lifetime.
Is that Cocolia? Is that a young Cocolia?
You're still young, child. There will come a day, when you do understand. This Supreme Guardian, she sees further than you or I.
Uh-huh.
All the decisions are for the security of Belobog.
Well, it said the old Guardian that we just saw was Alyssa Rand. So I'm assuming that's Cocolia's mother.
I just think it's a shame. Our research has hit an obstacle. Meanwhile, your results will be buried in the snow.
Don't be upset, child.
Say her name.
You still have lots of time ahead of you. When you find a way to destroy the Stellaron, our efforts will have been worth it.
I'm wondering, is this Cocolia? I don't know if this is an actual kid or not. I'm assuming so. Oh, because he says child,
Cache
but
number
she does not really sound like a kid.
24830. Transmission complete. Next transmission. Cache number 57614.
This is... Why is there a robot here?
Okay, that has to be Cocolia.
During his life, this was Dr. Mearsheimer's personal robot bodyguard. I heard it's a prototype from the Great War. Since the doctor and his assistants passed away, it's remained here. It hasn't moved an inch.
Oh, I see. Let's start. We must unearth the doctor's research conclusions. All of them.
Madam Guardian, I've found them. All the documents are here.
Good. That'll do.
Madam Guardian, what should we do with the robot?
Send it to the underground.
It would seem a great waste to destroy it. Find someone to reset its system, and then arrange for it to be sent to the underworld.
Uh-huh.
I hear that the development group is in need of a robot with defense capabilities.
So you reset him and shoved him into the
Yes,
underworld.
I'm sorry, Doctor. But these results must be taken care of by the architects. One day,
Can we see the
somebody
architects?
will be able to carry out your
What do they
behest.
look like?
Cache number 57614. Transmission complete.
That's it? That's all of it? That's all we
Concluding
have?
Data transmission.
We ask Bronya if she's doing okay with that information, and she says that she's fine, but just a little faint. Natasha asks to speak to us for a moment, and she thanks us for all the help we've done in the underworld, and mentions that she is the true chief of the Wildfire, and that Oleg is just a front, so that she can run Wildfire from the shadows. Natasha also mentions that Svarog opened up the Furnace Core to allow us to return to the Overworld. We learn that Sele is going to accompany us on our trip back to the Overworld to confront Cocolia. The main cast heads to the hotel from before to get some rest before returning to the Overworld. Once at the hotel, the crew has a little discussion outside, and the MC tells the rest of the crew about the dreams they've been having about Cocolia. Dawn creates the theory that the reason that we are having these dreams is because of the Stellaron inside of our body, and mentions that there is one person they have not talked to about Cocolia. The crew finally heads to bed, and this time the MC does not get a dream of Cocolia, but instead we get a very cute scene of Sele and Bronya hanging out at the orphanage and talking about the situation and their lives in the different regions. When the MC wakes up, we go outside and meet up with Dawn and March, where Dawn says that we should meet up with Wildfire to discuss the plan. Oleg says that Sampo is going to be our guide and bring us back to the overworld. Dawn asks where Bronya is because she is missing from the group, and Sele tells us that she already went back to discuss with Cocolia. Sele hands the crew a letter that Bronya wrote to us. The letter mentions that she went back to talk to Cocolia and says that if anything goes wrong, to go to the Landau siblings and they will help us out. Before we leave, we talk to Oleg one last time and learn that he was actually once an officer of the Silverman Guards, but after being discharged, he came down to the underworld to retire. After telling Sampo that we were ready to return to the overworld, it cuts to a scene of Bronya arriving back to Cocolia. Cocolia shows true emotion as she asks if Bronya is okay and if she got hurt. Bronya responds with saying that she's fine and was taken into the underworld. Cocolia quickly switches up her emotions and becomes very stern, and tells Bronya to tell her everything that she saw down there. Bronya explains that she does not believe that the Outsiders, the main crew, is as bad as Cocolia said that they were, and mentions that we helped the Underworlders solve some living situations and took down Svarog, which caused to learn some truths about the Stellaron. Cocolia asks her to continue. Bronya asks Cocolia if she has always known about the secrets of the Stellaron and asks for forgiveness in her defiance, but that she believes that the order to dispatch the Outsiders were a mistake. Cocolia bursts out and interrupts Bronya, calling Bronya names and saying Bronya has disappointed her, then orders guards to arrest Bronya. Bronya tells Cocolia to tell her the truth and to stop hiding the truth and dismissing Bronya. Cocolia agrees and says to follow her, and she will show the truth of the dying world. After that line, Bronya begins to hear the Stellaron in her head. It then cuts back to the main crew as they arrive back in Belobog in the overworld and decide that they should head to Serval and ask what she knows and if she can help us. As we head to Serval, we notice that the town is swarmed with Silverman guards. Serval quickly brings us inside her workshop to hide us from the guards. She also asks us what crime we committed to have so many guards out. Dawn stops March from explaining, and Serval praises us for not trusting her right away, then explains that we do not need to worry as Cocolia and her are not even on speaking terms, as Cocolia was the one who ejected Serval from the Architects and she refuses to help her. The MC asks if Serval knows Cocolia well, and she responds saying that they were like sisters once, inseparable, but that was all before she became the Supreme Guardian, which after that it almost seemed like she was a completely different person. The crew tells Serval about what we experienced in the underground. Serval says that she understands why Bronya told us to find her when we made it to the overworld, because when Serval was still in the Architects in the Scientific Research Division, she was researching the Stellaron. She then goes on to tell us everything she knows about the Stellaron by stating that the fact that there were only a few people in Belobog that knew of its existence, and that those that do would never associate it with the Fragmentum or the Eternal Freeze. She then says that she's the one who figured out that the Stellaron and the Fragmentum was linked, but was ejected before she could find the truth. After mentioning more about Cocolia, Serval brings up a point that it could be possible that there is a single guardian consciousness that gets handed down from generation to generation, and that the real Cocolia could have already vanished. We ask Serval, is Gepard worth talking to, and she says that he is too hard-headed and follows the rules too strictly to really trust something like this. Serval then says that while she's not able to observe the Stellaron itself, she did find a general area that it could be in, which is the northern side of Belobog through a Silverman Guard restricted zone. She then mentions that past the restricted zone is a whole heap of Fragmentum we would have to pass through as well. The crew mentions that it may not be enough to take it on, and Serval says that she will join us and help guide us through. As the crew and the Serval head to the door to leave the workshop, Gepard knocks and Serval quickly hides us away. Gepard tells Serval that there is something wrong with the barrier generator device and that they need her to take a look at it since she designed it. Serval asks Gepard why there are so many guards out. Gepard tells Serval, and the crew that is hiding, that Lady Bronya appeared last night and entered Glepoth Fort without saying anything to anyone, and that the Supreme Guardian is worried about the 3 intruders that may have followed Bronya out of the Fragmentum and back into the Administrative District, and as such has issued a curfew for the entire city. After talking some more, Gepard says that he's left the limited edition cup in the workshop and tries to go find it, but Serval distracts him before he can find us. Finally, Gepard leaves and Serval tells us that it's clear to come out. We then head out for the Silverman Guard restricted zone, which when we arrive, see that it is filled with Silverman guards as expected. Serval tells us to stick close and follow her lead. Serval starts to talk to the guard at the entrance, where it becomes quickly apparent that she is popular here as both Gepard's sister and from her band. We are quickly given temporary passes to enter the zone to fix the broken energy lines. Further in, we see a large spinning gear with 4 bridges on each side, 3 intact and 1 broken. Serval says that we need to use the mechanical gear bridge to cross to the other side, but when we do, that we will arrive on Hell on Earth. The EMC asks if the Architects will believe in Hell, since they follow Glepoth, where we surprisingly get a very quick yes from Serval. She expands on that, saying that they believe in hell can exist in any world, a plight that will inevitably come without intervention. They also believe that in the future a terrible catastrophe will, and if under the Glapath, the Preservation's guidance, they fail to construct a barrier, then that catastrophe will wipe away the stars and plunge all worlds into hell. We arrive at the controller for the bridge, but find that the controller does not work, so we cross what bridges we can to get to a different controller, which also does not work. Serval mentions the more that she thinks about it, the more that it seems deliberate, and that they must have rotated the bridge and cut the power to stop repositioning. Serval then says that we need to take a look at this energy supply installation itself. We venture further in and find the supply hub, but it is protected behind a locked gate. Serval starts to talk to the guard standing next to the gate and tries to convince him to let us pass the gate so that we can do an inspection on the hub. But the guard says that no one can get near the hub without the encryption key, which can be obtained by Captain Dunn. Serval gets very peppy and says that's not going to be a problem at all. As we find and speak to Dunn, we find out that he used to play the keyboard in Serval's band. Serval talks up to Dunn and asks for an encryption key, where Dunn sighs and asks what Gepard told us and where he contacted us. Dunn says that Gepard has just returned from the front line and asks if he could reconfirm with him. Serval looks surprised, and Dunn says that she is still a lousy liar and cannot give her the key. We then engage in combat with Dunn, and after defeating him, Serval apologizes and takes the key. The moment that we grab the key, the entire zone is alerted and alarms go off. After defeating some Silverman guards, we make it back to the hub and turn on the gear bridge controls. We make it back to the original controls and turn the gear bridge one turn, and Dawn mentions that we may find Gepard on the other side and asks Serval if she's ready. Serval responds saying that no matter what happens, she will stand with us as she promised. Once on the other side, we do in fact run into Gepard, who shows he is very sad and disappointed in Serval for everything that she has done and how she is helping the crew, and says that she's not worthy of the Landau name. Serval tells Gepard that the Supreme Guardian is behind everything and is keeping the truth from the people. Gepard has had enough and ordered the Silverman guards to arrest us, and we engage in battle with Gepard and his team. After fighting and taking his team down, the only one left standing is Gepard, even though he is very exhausted. Gepard allows us to talk again, as Serval says that if he won't listen to us, then listen to Bronya, and hands him the letter that Bronya wrote us before leaving the underground. Gepard decides to take our side and says that their main purpose is to protect the people of Belobog, because without them there is no Belobog, which in turn he does not see how fighting us will help protect the people. He finishes by saying that if he finds out we're using Serval and Bronya to meet hidden agendas, he will carry out our punishment with no mercy. He also mentions that if we want to head further northward, then we'll have to traverse an area entirely corroded by the Fragmentum. Gepard gets his guards together to help us with the front lines of the Fragmentum, but says that we will be alone after we break through. After a long battle, Gepard shows that he can barely take any more fighting, and Serval decides to stay back and help him out while we continue forward. She also asks March to take a picture of the Stellaron for her. As the crew presses onward, it cuts to Welt and Himiko on the Express, where Welt explains to Himiko that the Fragmentum activity on Nerilo is intensifying and asks if they should go down to help. Himiko says that this is our mission and they should not interrupt and allow us to solve it ourselves. As we head inside, we quickly find that the toy that Bronya found at the orphanage was on the ground. March starts to freak out and points out that there is an after image of Bronya and Cocolia standing by the staircase, which John explains is a sort of echo that is a residual energy caused by the Fragmentum. When we interact with the Echo, we hear a conversation between Cocolia and Bronya, where Cocolia explains that 700 years ago, this area was Belobog's northern border and the site of an ancient battle, where Alyssa Rand led the first Silverman guards in the resistance to the Legion. She then tells Bronya to not let the fragmented appearance fool her, because on the day the promise is fulfilled, these ruins will become the breeding ground of a new world. Bronya follows up by asking if Cocolia truly believes the Stellaron's promise, as it caused the eternal freeze and spawned the Fragmentum. Cocolia responded to that by saying that the crime of the ancestors was their inability to embrace that destruction sooner, then continues saying that there is a price to pay for new life, wiping away every decaying vestige of this old world, and renouncing the meaningless and lingering struggle. This is the price that the Stellaron demands. We walk forward past the Echo and find a locked gate. March points out that there is an energy hub behind us and we should try that. When the crew does so, it opens up one of the 4 locks on the gate. We quickly find a second hub and activate it. Then a third is found, and after activating it, Dawn asks if we remember the dreams we mentioned before, then says that we were awake, that he knows that we're awake right now, but wants us to try and focus and hear the voice that we heard. When the EMC does so, we hear the Stellaron once again, but this time it says, "Danger approaches, you must eradicate once and for all." We explain that the voice knows that we're getting close, and Dawn explains that due to our Stellaron, it is somehow connecting to the other Stellaron on Nerilo, and we're hearing its voice. We find the 4th and last hub, which unlocks the main gate, but on the way back, we run into another echo of Cocolia and Bronya. When we listen to this echo, it starts off with Bronya telling Cocolia, even if the Stellaron is telling the truth, every other Supreme Guardian resisted the call of the voice. How could they have all been wrong? Cocolia responds that they never looked up to the beings in the stars, who sees them as a footnote, and that she will not follow the Guardian's misguided steps down that blind alley of narcissism. fragmentum. If persistence is futile, then one must choose a new beginning. Bronya responds, but Glapoth, the preservation, are they not one of the magnificent entities you speak of? Is it not their strength that has sheltered Belobog this entire time? Cocolia says that Glapoth has never looked civilization in the eye. The echo ends and the crew continues past the main gate. We then run into a new monster in the fragmentum that blocks some of our skills in the fight. After the fight, Dawn mentions that it was a high-level fragmentum monster that had a mind of its own and was using complex tactics in battle. The crew finds another echo of Cocolia and Bronya, which when interacted with has Cocolia explain to Bronya that this is where Alyssa Rand realized that they could not defeat the Legion, so she went to the aid of the Stellaron and wished the Eternal Freeze to happen. She continues about how ironic it is that all the Stellaron did was answer humanity's call, and yet they kept its existence a guarded secret for centuries. She then mentions that if they try to use it to control the Stellaron. Bronya asks what it is. Cocolia explains that it is something created using otherworldly technology, an inhibitor that a corporation from the old world and the architects attempted to use to house the Stellaron. She then says that all her questions will be answered soon. The crew then proceeds further into the fragmentum. Much deeper in, we find a solo echo of Cocolia, which tells us we cannot approach the Stellaron. The echo then attacks us. After defeating the echo, we find a huge flight of stairs and know that at the top we will engage with the real Cocolia. March says that she doesn't want our journey to end just yet, but how she's not nervous. Celia also explains that she is surprised that she's not nervous either. March then says that we hit the jackpot for this being our first trailblazing expedition. We then invite Celia to join us on the Express after the Solar Reload situation is over. We then go up the stairs and find the heart of the Eternal Freeze and a ton of Antimatter Legion troops that were completely frozen over in ice. We then find the palm of a huge robot while exploring further up the hill. We arrive at the top and Cocolia and Bronya are standing at the front of a huge machine, and Bronya is holding her head and yelling no. Cocolia is begging her to give in to the Stellaron and accept the promised future. Cocolia asks why, when faced with the irrefutable strength, is our first thought always to resist, to cover our ears, instead of hearing its call. It's due to the cowardice entrenched in the depths of human nature, so difficult to efface. Celia interrupts Cocolia and starts to explain to Bronya that she needs to snap out of it and join us to defeat Cocolia. Cocolia gives us another speech about how she wants to see Bronya's decision, as Cocolia has explained everything about the Stellaron and wishes made upon it, and how when she first saw the Stellaron she had no hesitation to help the Stellaron because compared to the illusory, ever more distant preservation, this was so tangible. Bronya then gives a huge speech to Cocolia about her side of the story and that she cannot allow the Stellaron to destroy everything that they have endured due to the existence of the Stellaron in the first place. How, even if this world is doomed to fall apart, they should allow humanity to pave the way to its final outcome and not hand over the fate to the Seed of Ruin. She continues saying that Cocolia is seeking to crush human nature underfoot while masquerading as an arbiter and a god, and she will not allow that to happen. Cocolia responds saying, "What a pity, Bronya, you were supposed to be the mother of the new world." The whole hill starts to shake violently as Cocolia continues by saying, "This fate of the city of Belobog is sealed. Its future will unfold in our hands and we will become the foundation of the new world." A gigantic robot emerged and broke a huge part of the hill off, and the crew then engages in combat. The robot goes in for a punch, but it's blasted by a laser, which ends its attack. Himiko then talks in over the comms and mentions that she was the one who shot the laser, and that she misses us and cannot wait for us to finish this to see us again. She then hands the combat back over to us. We then get this epic cutscene of the MC scaling the engine of creation. It's like, how do they do this? Oh! Hello? Yo! Main character about to pop off! Oh my god, Bronya with the trigger finger! Bronya's like, going god mode. Oh, let's go, Sally! Is she gonna catapult me? Let's go, bro! All this music. Come on, go, go, go! Oh no. Oh! Look at the arrow from March! Holy shit. That was so dope. Let's go! We arrive at the top and see Cocolia transform into a higher state of power granted by the Stellaron. After a small fight, the MC gets impaled through the heart and the spot where the Stellaron was inserted by a spear from Cocolia and falls off the robot. It then cuts to a scene of what appears to be the MC in space, and they begin to speak, asking, "Is this the universe? But I was fighting Cocolia, why am I here?" The MC confirms that we were here the first time when we drew Nanook's gaze, back at the space station. The MC walks forward and we get an echo of some Silverman guards, Gepard and Cocolia, that goes as follows.
Guardian.
Oh?
Fragmentum activity is intensifying. Almost half the commercial district has been corroded. The guards have relocated the affected residents to the outer municipal district for time being.
And the losses?
The guards...
26?
We lost 26. But
Go on.
I I don't know. I cannot say for certain that they are dead.
26?
I saw firsthand the broken figures of fallen comrades pacing back and forth in the fragmentum. I cannot let them linger.
So that fragmentum did take them
inexplicable.
over.
That place defies reason. It's a madness.
Yeah, so the guards that we see in the
Japard.
fragmentum.
You must notify the bereaved. Issue emergency supplies to the residents that were saved.
We have already issued the disaster relief. But madam, if this situation continues...
I know well the consequences, Japard. You may leave.
Oh, dude, come on. She really gave no shit.
We continue and get a second echo, this time of Cocolia and Serval.
Staying in the fragmentum.
700 years, Cocolia. The efforts of so many people
Oh,
throughout
Serval.
generations, and in this era, their incomplete research can finally come to fruition. To the north of Belobog, that's where the Stellaron is. Somewhere in the northern snow plains.
Oh, so she told her where it is?
How did it get there? And how has no one discovered
Or
it
like
in all
she
this
told
time?
her that she knew where it
Did
was.
someone hide it there? Maybe there's a connection to the Eternal Freeze, to the Fragmentum. Maybe there's still a way to save this world. The answers are all there, Cocolia. Give me some soldiers and we can take the research team north. We're bound to find the Stella...
That's why she got kicked.
Has it slipped your mind, Serval? The research you speak of is forbidden. I could have you arrested and locked away immediately.
But you're
How is
like
that important? Cocolia, this is our greatest discovery. We could end all of this. All of this.
she's
suffering.
literally like the highest power. She can
Why
just
do you
make
hesitate?
it not.
Isn't that what you've always been hoping for? Open your eyes. Get out of this cage and take a look at the city. What is there to worry about? What is there to lose?
Bro, the emotion in Serval's
You are
voice, bro.
tired, Landau. We'll talk again when you've come to your senses.
Come on.
To my senses?
Yeah, what?
Guards! Miss Serval is tired. Take her to rest.
Cocolia.
Bro, Kakoli is pissing me off,
Sequester
bro.
her lab and detain the researchers. Their work is illegal.
Impound
everything as evidence. Nobody but me will be permitted to examine it.
Oh, of course, only her.
You've changed, Cocolia. You were... I thought you cared.
We will talk again when you are calmer, Miss Serval. But your Stellaron research ends here. Serval Landau. You were my most cherished friend.
And it could still be, but you're being... Wow.
We continue forward again and see a third echo of Cocolia and Silverman guards at the machine at the top of the hill.
Supreme Guardian, the Fragmentum monsters are surging this way.
Oh, this is at the top of the thing, right?
You must leave at once, I beg you. This place, it's too dangerous here.
Foolish. Weak.
What? Madam, what are you saying? Madam, you must leave immediately.
Is this when she like changed?
Only I can understand. They have eyes that do not see, ears that do not hear.
Yeah, this sounds like this is when she first started like having a different mentality.
Engulf them! Feast on their willful ignorance! Absolve them of their stupidity and fear!
Hello?
Finally, a fourth echo of Branya and Cocolia.
Forgive me, Mother. But I still don't understand.
The report states that the underworld is already suffering from fragmentum corrosion. We've withdrawn every guard. How will those below ground fend for themselves?
Oh look, see, she knew even before.
The automaton defense will take care of their safety. Daughter, as my successor, you must possess a holistic view of the situation. This is the most important defensive line. If the surface falls, the underground will vanish in an instant. Our defenses here must be maintained at all costs. These are the choices we make.
That is
Branya.
not how that worked at all.
As a leader, you must harbor the courage and foresight to choose. You, me, and every Silver Main guard in the city, all of us.
If you
must
need
carry
everyone
out
to
a
guard
higher
the top, then bring everyone
There will
from the
come a day
underground to
when
the
you
surface.
must make your own choice.
Let them help.
Do you understand?
Higher mission?
It's still too early, Branya. Still too early. When the time is right, you will know.
Look how scared Branya looks in that tube. The MC then goes to the center of the universe shown and finds a sword impaled into the ground. The MC then grabs the sword as it hurts her. Then she finally breaks the sword out and we can see Glapoth, the preservation in its full form, who grants us power. Cocolia is bewildered how we got its power, and Branya explains that the preservation has chosen. We engage in its final confrontation of Cocolia and use the engine of creation to our own aid. Here is where it appears that the beta has removed the final cutscene in the Relo story, as once Cocolia is defeated, it does give a brief summary from March, saying that we got rid of Cocolia and the Stellaron, and that the crisis of Relo 6 is just kinda over now. I really doubt that it's just going to be this anticlimactic in the full game. So I do believe that they did take out that part of the story. We did, however, then get a cut to black as we get text that explains with the combined efforts of the crew, Branya and Sele, Cocolia was defeated and the threat created by the Stellaron was temporarily averted. But the crisis facing Belobog is far from over. Led by Branya, the people of the overworld and the underworld will once again unite and continue to fight for their survival. The crew's adventure in Relo 6 has come to an end for the time being, but the Trailblazers' journey among the stars has just begun. This next chapter was actually chosen by you guys. I did a poll on Twitter asking if you'd be interested in having a chapter that would go over the differences between Closed Beta Test 1 and this Closed Beta Test, and it was a unanimous yes. So here are the differences in the beta. The first difference is, well, the entirety of the space station arc. This was not in the first Closed Beta Test at all. The second difference is that on the Astral Express, right before the jump to Relo 6, in the first Closed Beta Test, Himiko did mention the Aeon of Beauty, but in this Closed Beta Test, that was not the case. The third difference is that when talking to Japard about us being from a different planet, in the first Closed Beta Test, they just took our word for it, while in this Closed Beta, March actually showed the Silverman guards a picture of Relo 6 from the Express. The fourth difference is, during the first Closed Beta Test, when Capard tells the story of Belobog, it was originally explained that before the Eternal Freeze, in the Age of Guilt, there were many cities like Belobog, but the world was brimming with evil and scoured by fire and smoke. The carbonic sulfurous fumes awakened a devil slumbering underneath the surface, causing the Eternal Freeze, a front of piercing cold that destroyed all in its wake except for Belobog due to Plamia's protection. But in the second Closed Beta Test, it's now described as monsters from beyond the sky set the world ablaze. The land was turned to scorched earth, and raging infernos and billowing towers of smoke that would stretch upon the horizon. But Belobog was protected thanks to Glapoth, the preservation. We know the monsters to be the Antimatter Legion. The fifth difference is during the first Closed Beta Test, after Dawn mentions that it sounds like Capard is reciting from a textbook, we meet Pella, and then it cuts to a conversation between Cocolia and Branya, where Branya is asked to bring the outsiders to her, which she complies and seeks us out, trying to take us away from Pella. We then attack and run into the Fragmentum, where Branya and other Silverman guards follow us. But in this Closed Beta Test, Capard takes us directly to Cocolia, where we interrupt that conversation that she was having with Branya, and Cocolia sends her away so that she can speak with us. She gives us freedom to walk around the city and even a hotel to rest in. The dream when we rest is different, and the following day, Cocolia sends Branya out to arrest us and we escape into the Fragmentum as usual. Next difference is that in the first Closed Beta Test in the underworld, after leaving Natasha's clinic, instead of talking to Don Hung and then finding March, watching Branya making a ruckus, we instead find March first, talking to Hook, who we then play hide and seek with to get the information on where Sampo and Dawn might have gone, which leads to the whole Fight Club scene. Next up, the first mission in Closed Beta Test 1 after meeting Sele was working with her to find out about the Wonder Medicine, which was used to help cure the crystallization sickness that was caused by being near Geomero. In this Closed Beta Test, the Wonder Medicine is not mentioned at all in the main story and is only mentioned in a side mission. The sickness it was also for changed from being the sickness caused by Geomero to a sickness being caused by the Fragmentum. In the first Closed Beta Test, during the mission with the Wonder Medicine, we encounter Hook and her dad, as well as Clara for the first time. This is also the mission that we learn all about Natasha's backstory and her brother. While in this Closed Beta Test, all the info about her brother was slammed into a side mission and kept out of the main storyline. We also do not meet Clara until much later into the story. In the first Closed Beta Test, after the mission with Sele, the crew sleeps and is awoken by an earthquake where we learn that the mine collapsed and we enter to find Hook's dad had destroyed the mines with help of Svarog, and Hook's father, Fursman, was killed on Hook's birthday. In this new beta, this has been replaced with a confrontation between the vagrants and the miners over the large Geomero vein that was found and caused a turf war. As of where we currently are in the story of Closed Beta Test 2, Fursman is not killed and lives through a happy side mission about Hook's birthday. Let's hope it stays this way. Nearing the end of the differences in the first Closed Beta Test, after the events of the mine, Oleg tasks us to bring us down with Svarog, which leads us to the camp where we are told about the Bloody Rabbit, which we go and find that it is actually Clara, who then takes us back to Svarog where we defeat him along with Wildfire and they allow us to go back to the surface. The entire events in between the mine and Svarog are missing from Closed Beta Test 1. Here, in Closed Beta Test 2, after the new and improved mining accident, we go through many storylines, including the scenes at the orphanage with Sele and Bronya, where we learn that Bronya is actually from the underground, which is not a part of her character in the first beta. Svarog also did not have any video files about the Stellaron in Closed Beta Test 1, but instead just tells us the location. Finally, the last difference is that in the overworld part, Bronya was locked away after her encounter with Cocolia and does not have them go to the Stellaron. During the unlock process of the main energy hub, we would get a dream and a message from Plamia after every energy hub activated, which did not occur in Closed Beta Test 2, and was instead replaced with the echoes of Bronya and Cocolia in the Fragmentum. The whole events with Cocolia's boss fight and meeting Glapoth never happened. Instead, in Closed Beta Test 1, we saw Gepard, who led us through without a fight, and then once meeting Cocolia in the Fragmentum, the story ended. Alright, and so I decided to make this chapter last minute just for things that I found interesting inside some of the letters and documents that we found inside the archives of the beta. Starting with this entry titled Fragments of Herta Research, Atlas Volume 7, Traffic. This entry lists some of the items that Herta has in her collection and what they've been used for, starting with item number Transport 01483, or the Galactic Emergency Rug. This item is a beige and brown Bohemian style rug, but where woolen tassels should have been are now replaced with small golden stellars that oscillate up and down at the same angle both ways. This rug will automatically adjust its size within a set range based on the weight of the item. This rug successfully transported and saved hundreds of passengers in the first large-scale space transportation accident caused by the traffic event brought upon by the Stellaron. The next item is item 01485, or the Colored Beacon Paste. This item is a flat tin tube of about 32 centimeters in length and 3 centimeters in diameter. The tube is filled with dark and gold gel, which absorbs all known colors and turns into that specific shade in the end. This is basically a glorified flare, as it is a commonly seen emergency item among the Nameless, which is what the main crew is a part of. The bright, visually stimulating colors allow the Galactic Rescue to easily spot signs written with it. It was invented by a Nameless that was trapped in a barren and desolate star system that used scraps from a white star fragment to produce the beacon. This has also been seen used by galactic bandits who use the colored beacon paste to leave graffiti packed with profanity everywhere. The next piece of information I would like to focus on is in Herta's manuscript about the founding of the IPC, or the International Peace Corporation. She explains that there were two very important people that followed Glapoth, Aeon and Preservation, and would travel to other worlds to inform the people that Glapoth was building a wall light years long to protect everyone inside. They would ask these planets to help by allowing them to use their construction resources like wood, aluminum, etc. One day they arrived on a planet that asked if they could receive in return. The first of the important duo, whose name is Louis Fleming, decided to offer winter sun fruits for their resources, but lied about their rarity to gain more resources from each fruit traded. This was the founding of trade. The second of the important duo, whose name was Dongfeng Kexing, realized something. If they were the only people in the entire galaxy they could trade with, then it's time for them to set their own rules. And with that, the galactic currency was born. More than 770 Amber Eras ago, Louis Fleming and Dongfeng Kexing announced the reformation of the support team and started the Interastral Peace Corporation. The next interesting thing that I found was again in one of Herta's manuscripts, but this time, preface. In this log, she writes about how the IPC has funded her to write a book sharing her knowledge, which most of the Genius Society is avidly against. But the more Herta thought about it, the more she was okay with writing a book. Although it would not contain her most groundbreaking discoveries or any useful mathematical equations, but instead be about the universe, Aeons, factions, etc. One interesting part in this log is where she writes about how she assisted Zhen Shao in their battle against the Abominations, got her hands on collections from the Astral Express, and even stirred up trouble with the Garden of Recollection. Surprise, surprise! The next piece is once again from Herta's manuscript, this one being on the Genius Society itself. The text starts off with Herta asking, what is the most mysterious organization in the entire universe? She mentions the Stellaron Hunters, the Nameless, and the Sky Choir. One thing that she mentions of note is the mysterious and unknown Device 9, which is a faction that I was unable to find info on besides this loading screen tip, which was mentioned in the faction section. To continue on with the manuscript, Herta mentions how the answer to her question is none other than the Genius Society itself, which she is a part of. She talks about how she managed to conduct reverse progeria in old age. This has allowed her to regain her youth and continue living for a very, very long time. During this newfound youth, she managed to solve the secret behind the imaginary leakage phenomenon and captured and sealed a Stellaron. Herta says that she has saved the planet they were on from total destruction 19 times and has met the Aeons twice. Now I don't know if she means she's met all of the Aeons twice or just 2 Aeons, but if we go with the fact that she'd only met 2 Aeons, going through the previous text, I believe that the 2 that she has met and seen with her own eyes is Naus, the Aeon of Knowledge, and Glapoth, Aeon of Preservation, as she has mentioned the physical description of both of those in other manuscripts. Wow. Okay. Yes. So this video definitely took a lot longer than the first lore video did, which you can probably tell by the view time. It's about an hour and a half long, I believe, in total, which is just insane. But if you made it this far, thank you so much again, like I said at the beginning, for all the support that you guys have been giving me recently. Whether you've come in from the shout out from UD and you're part of the fam, or if you just stumbled upon my videos, I really do appreciate every single nice comment, and I've been getting a bunch of nice comments, so thank you guys so much. And yeah, you've already been here for about an hour and a half, so I'm going to let you go, but definitely subscribe if you haven't already, and I will keep you guys updated on any future Star Rail, Zenless, any Hoyoverse content. You know your boy got you. See you boys in the next one. Bye.